Okay, we have done the first pass of detailing the dock in here, and now we are going to create a railing system that goes across all of these to be as a protector. And it's better to call it the fencing system, not the fencing that goes across all of these to protect people from falling apart into the sea. And I'm going to make it modular also. So let's go again, open Blender. And again, I'm going to take a copy from this to borrow the dimensions and the pivot as well. So let's create not a circle, a cylinder, and make it a bit smaller in size and resize it just a bit. And let me put the pivot in here, and I'm going to make the shade smooth better on this because I really do not want these faceted edges. So the smooth and 30 degrees will be perfect for this. So box select, and this needs to be smaller just a bit. And when I'm comparing it against the mannequin in here, I feel like this one is okay. So I'm going to make this cylindrical, just like this one. But if we found some intersections between the couple of pieces, I might bring these down just a bit to avoid any overlapping geometry that is not good for composition. So this one is in here, and now I'm gonna make a copy, bring this one up, rotate it 90 degrees, and resize it in this direction, something like this. And take a copy again, and to get rid of those CG lines, I bend these just a bit. And later on, when we try to detail these out, we will be a lot more careful in placing details. So this is going to be the first rail that we create. Let's select all of them and this one and connect them, Control and J. And let's compare the pivot of these two together. Now the pivot is in the same place. And if your pivot is off, for example, if the pivot, let me make it right. If the pivot is in here and you want to fix the pivot system, for example, borrow the pivot from here, what you can do is using this world center in here. Let me drag this over so it's a little bit better to visualize. Let me drag this out. And let's say that we want to borrow the pivot from this. And the pivot of this is on top. So I'm going to select this and bring the origin pi up and put the world center unselected. And now it has placed the world center on this part that the pivot of this has been placed. And now we select this and place the pivot unselected. Excuse me, I was wrong. Select this unselected and we bring the pivot to cursor now. First we place the cursor on this, make the cursor in here on the pivot of this one, and then change the pivot on this one to cursor. And this is what you can do to borrow the pivot from this. So let's make the pivot to origin and bring this over, and now you see the placement is alright. So let's take this one, static mesh underscore modular dock fencing. So let's call it 3 meters _01. The name should be as descriptive as possible. So export it, and I'm gonna make another variation from this. Let's copy this and make a corner piece out of this one. So let's delete this one, and now join these two pieces, and now we have a corner piece. Okay, of course I merged them accidentally. Let me copy the name and duplicate this and name this fencing corner 3 meters _1, and this one is the fence, the default one. I'm going to select these because I do not need them and delete them without any problem. Okay, let's export this and this as well. Now I'm gonna make a couple of new ones to make variations out of this. Let's drag this one out, and this one I'm going to box select and make it a couple of meters. And let me, no, I should have first made a copy and drag this over so that we have this piece untouched. And let's take these and drag them out just a bit. So this one is alright as well. And I could have brought this to the top just a bit to give it a little bit of variation. So let's name this 2 meter instead of 3 meters because this is a 2 meter piece. And variation 0, 1. And let's delete this one and make a copy from this. Take the original one and bring it in here, and I'm going to make a 4 meter piece. So take this one and drag this one out, and for example take this and bring it in here to give it a little bit of variation. So I'm going to select this and delete it, and this is going to be a variation piece as well, perfect for adding in the center. So let's make the naming right as well, and I'm gonna call it 4 meters _0, 1. So I believe this is enough for it. Later on we may need to add more variations, but for now it's enough. So let's take them one by one and export them, and then import them into Unreal to make the set dressing right. So let's drag these ones out, rotate them, and place them right here and take an incremental save from the scene. Okay, import, and take these 4 and import them without changing anything. So let's save them out, and again I'm going to borrow this and replace it with the fence. Let's take a corner piece because this one is a corner. And it's obvious in here that we need to add a corner piece for this one as well. So let's open the Blender, bring this corner piece and make it a smaller. And call it corner 2 meters instead of 3 meters. Variation 0, 1. Okay, and export it. And import it in here. And then so simply select this one and replace it with this. Okay, this is good. And let's start to copy this over to make it right. And now again, it's about finding a good way to copy these over and make a lot of things with these. So, and these lines will make perfect lines for guiding the eye towards the focal point, which is this one. So let's go to in here, and guiding lines are very strong in pointing the eye towards the focal point. And always try to use the guiding line. They will help a lot in composition. So let's take these and start to duplicate them around. So I can select them from here. 2 meters. Let's select the 4 meters piece. And I'm going to make the fencing system right. And later on, we will add a lot of variations. For example, making broken ones, making some tiny and neat ones. And it's just a matter of time to wait and see. Okay, this is done. Now I'm going to select these newly placed fencing systems. And this one in the last, select this and deselect this one because this is the corner piece. And bring them in here. And select this 2 meter piece and drag it in here to close this gap. Okay, this is enough. And now I can select this and I start to select something randomly from it. So let's copy this over and I start to select randomly from these. And the whole point is that it's good to avoid any repetition or things of that nature. So let's drag this one back, take a copy again, and no, a 3 meters piece will do. And let's take this one and I'm going to rotate it. And when trying to copy with Alt, if you hold down Shift, the camera also is going to move with you. So this one is also good. And I'm not going to make anything into here. Later on, we might add some props to cover this area, but for now, I'm only caring about the overall shapes. So the metric system is also alright. You see there's a meter piece gap in here, which is perfect. By using 100 centimeters increments, we are easily able to swap things out. So this is okay. And let's make this couple of 2 meters one instead of single meters. Or I can make this the corner piece. Yeah, it's working all right and perfectly. So drag this one out, select a 2 meter piece from here. And later on, we will add some variations for each one. For example, we might have a couple of 2 meter pieces, and it will help a lot to cover the modularity that we created. So let's take these and copy them. And I'm going to place a corner piece in here, but a 3 meters corner piece. So instead, let's go into Blender and make a 4 meters corner piece as well. So drag this over in here and copy this one and make the naming right. Fencing corner. Okay, duplicate it and rotate it 90 degrees. And now it's 4 meters by 4 meters. And I'm going to select this and bring it in here to cover the gap. And make it larger a bit. Okay. Select both of them and join them. And the pivot should be good as well also. So export it and open Unreal Engine and import it again. 4 meters corner piece. Looks like we need to rotate this instead. Yeah, and that is perfect now. Okay, we've done the railing on this first platform. And now it's all the matter of copy and pasting the logic that we created around. So let's make this one like this and copy this over sometime. And when you create something, when you finish it, it's all the matter of copying and pasting around. And that is the case especially with the modular approach. It's really helpful when you start to create things in modular approach. And you see how powerful the metric system is. And all of the structure that we have created in here is based on a metric system that allows for fast creation of objects. So I'm gonna copy this around. One way of copying this is to scale this in negative, in this case, negative x. Let's make it -1, and it basically inverts it and makes duplicate on the other side. So now that I've created that, let me take these. I'm gonna borrow them from here. So take them from here. We just simply copy these and place them in there. And later on, if we need it, we can change the fence in a single click. I just now want something for fast iteration. So this is repetitive. Let's take this, bring this one out, and we can make this one a broken one for a bit of a storytelling, or place something in here. So let's, for that side, take these. Since these do not have a distinctive material, it's a little bit hard for me to select them, but that is not a problem. It's a lot faster than trying to add single kits into there. So let's take these and copy them in here. And always try to stay on grid. You see how perfectly the grid system works. We have placed the metric grid in here, and it works in 100 centimeters increments. So every time we try to move something, it just spawns right in the place that we need it, and that is perfectly fine. So let's add this one in here, and for this one I'm going to spawn a corner piece, not this one, and this one is alright. So, and for this one I'm going to change the piece to something like 2 meters. Okay, and let's take these again from here and start to copy them and bring them over there. So the last one, this is done, and I can safely remove this or place it with something non-corner like this to leave a little bit of gap in here. And later on also we can try to make some extra fencing system for these as well. So now that we have done a little bit of that, let's go to the maximized view and start to look through the composition camera. Okay, and I feel like I can change that just a bit to reveal a little bit more of the what is going on here. And you see a lot of the guiding lines in here pointing towards the focal point, which is here. And now we are in cinematic mode. We should be in cinematic mode and then spawn the camera. And let's select the camera. It doesn't, so let's manually go into the camera and start to see the grid lines. This is good. And this is good as well. So I'm going to bring this one in here just a bit, and this one is doing right as well. And in the end we are going to cover these areas with a lot of foliage so that we close the composition a little bit, and we use the foliages and trees and grasses and bushes and things like that to create a vignette effect to center the focus on this part only. So this is the composition camera I'm happy with. For now, select this one and delete it. And take a copy from this. And now let's close this and see where we need to put the fences and copy them. I need to take these and copy them to this side as well. So let me delete this, and I'm going to make this a corner piece. 2 by 2 works fine. And again, now in Y we need to flip it, -1, flips it. And try not to copy this over and use this to spawn things on. So for example, I'll create this one and replace it with something. The -1 effect is still here. So always try to spawn your things are on modules that are not inverted or something. So a 2-meter piece in here works alright. Or I can simply swap it with a corner piece. A 2-meter corner piece instead. Let's bring it here. And this is a 3-meter piece. Let's swap it with 2-meter piece. And this is working all right. And now I'm going to copy the fences from here. And copy them to the other side. To close this in here. Rotate 90 degrees. And later on when we try to do variation and set dressing, we try to make this right. We do a lot of rotation, breaking things. We do a lot of things to make this as natural as possible. So let's copy this, rotate it to break the repetition, and place it in here. And it's obvious that we do not need this piece, or I can swap it with a 2-meter piece. No, it's not working. Let's delete it. And this one is also going to be deleted. And this one swapped with the smaller one. Okay, in here also we need to place these modules as well. So let's take these and bring them in here. And copy again. And borrow something from here. Let's swap it with a 2-meter piece. And in here bring a corner piece to cover it. And again a corner piece. This one a 3-meter one, no, a 4-meter piece. All right. These ones as well. Let me copy them. And this grid system is very powerful. Look how beautifully they start to work together. And although this is something like a natural thing, the grid system is working perfectly on that. Everything is on a grid, on a metric system. This one, and now I only need to bring this out and make a corner piece, or leave this just like this. Let's rotate this around. And let's see, this one is a 3-meter piece. Let's swap it with 2 and copy this again to this side. Okay, now I feel like the fencing system is working all right, but we need to have a fencing system in here as well. So I can take this one, bring it out to make a way in here, and swap this one with a 2-meter piece as well. And we need to cover this area. And the more you concentrate on the blockout, the more later on you're going to enjoy it. Because later on it's all going to be about just making meshes more detailed inside inside Blender, and then importing them in here to get something that looks right. Just you have to put a little bit of time on the blockout and modularity, and you will enjoy this later on. You will see. So a 2-meter piece, no, a 2-meter non-corner piece. And this one we can swap it with something else. So let's take these and copy them in here. And we can later on do something to make this more natural. And copy this over and try to swap it with some other kits. Okay, it's fine now. So now I believe that fencing system is okay. And right now it's looking too CG and the lines are so straight and everything is working on a metric system. It's good into some extent, but it will look modular if you don't try to add a lot of variations. And I mean variation in meshes, variation in texture, and anything else. So we have done the port, and now I'm really happy with this. Let's take this and copy this over to this side as well to close this gap, because this is not going to be seen. Okay, and now let's take the post-process volume, and in here in the color correction, in color grading, in the global tab, I'm going to open up the contrast, and I'm going to make the contrast 1.25 to make the colors a little bit more popped up. 1.25. That makes the color a little bit more alive and happy, making the darks darker and making the brights brighter, and adding good amounts of variation and contrast in the scene. Okay, this is a screenshot from before and after adding the contrast. You see how washed out this one is and how contrasted this has become. And we have now placed a good amount of time on the blockout. And of course, we are going to develop the blockout even more. And the more time you spend on the blockout, the better results later on you're getting, because that's in the blockout stage which you define how many meshes, how many materials, and how many things you want. And the planning in this stage is very crucial to create something beautiful. And you see in here, by just using some meshes, there are 12 meshes, we have created a whole port system. And this planning is very helpful. And you might be tempted, for example, to do a lot of AAA props and place them into the scene without doing a proper blockout. And this blockout may seem a little bit intimidating and less interesting than starting to create so many AAA assets, but it's going to be worth it in the end, because now we have created a pretty powerful logic for the dock that we have in here. Let me bring it up. You see, we have created our dock and everything is in place. And now what we are going to do is taking these meshes, starting to add detail on them, and then it's all the matter of selecting them, export, and in Unreal Engine selecting them in here and hit re-import, and they get placed right after another. And always try to take time and put the time on planning, reference gathering, and modularity, and blockout. Of course, if your system is using a system for modularity, spend time on modularity and something like this. You see, this would have been impossible to create on some single meshes without losing a lot of quality. But now we have created a system that is powerful enough to create a whole dock alone using some meshes. And later on, when we start to texture these and add detail to them, you will understand how powerful this modularity system works. And always try to have a lot of things placed in the modularity. Of course, there are a lot of props, for example, some cargo props, some boats and things like that, which I'm going to place later. I might not create a blockout for them because they take a little bit of time. Or I might create blockout for them depending on the mood that I'm in. But overall, it's in this module, in this blockout system that you really decide on how many meshes and materials and everything you're going to create. So the more time you spend in the blockout, the better off your project is going to be in the end. So do not be ashamed if the scene isn't going to look alright for now. It will look good later on when you try to add meshes. But try to add a lot of modularity and blockout so that your scene becomes a lot more successful later on. So let me swap it with this, and this is the last one. And now our dock has been finished. And when looking for blockout and creating blockout, start to go from big to medium and a small. And you see the big are these that are most visible when you're trying to look at them from far away. We have first created the big meshes and then I started to add this little fencing system that is a little bit smaller than this, and these are medium shapes. And for small shapes, for example, they are some set dressing props or things of that nature. For example, adding decals, little props like cargo props, or trying to add some broken planks or things like that to add details into the scene. Normally, when I'm doing the projects, I do the big and medium in the blockout stage. And later on, I start to flesh out the scene and start to add those tertiary details to make the environment a lot more sophisticated. So again, let's have another look in here. And now that I have created a port, I really do not want this to be a grayscale thing. So let's go in here and create a material for it. And I'm going to make the material world space because these meshes do not have UV for now. I'm going to make a world space material so that the texture is applied to the world, not the objects. And this is good for bypassing the UVs. Okay, let's create a new material. I'm going to call it world space blockout. And I'm going to put this in debug folder so that I know later on I'm not going to use this in the final product. So for the world space, there's a node called world align texture, and that is here, and it basically gives us a texture that is projected in either in X and Y or Z or X and Y and Z combined together. So I'm going to take this one and assign it to base color, and now for a texture I'm going to add and assign a texture to this so that the texture becomes mapped to the world. So let's go to the starter content to see what we have in the textures in here. So I'm gonna look for a texture that is black and white so that we can tint it later on. So this Perlin noise will do, I believe. Let's take this, and to assign textures to material functions, this is a material function. If you click on it, you go to the function that has created this material. You need to first convert this one to a texture object. You simply right click on it and convert to texture object. Materials accept texture objects. So right click and convert this to parameters so that later on we can change it in real time. So let's call this texture simply. And texture size, we need to assign a vector 3 into this. And let's convert this one into parameter also and call it tiling. Okay, and for the default tiling, I'm going to make it white. And white is white in R, G, and B. And these in the tiling become X, Y, and Z you see in here. So let's take this, and of course I'm going to add a multiply in here, drag the output using control and drag it here, drag the material into the A and bring another vector 3 in here and convert it to a parameter, and now I'm going to call it tint. And for the tint, the default, I'm going to make it white because white in multiply means the default, and this is the default. So let's take this and go into the debug, materials, world space, take an instance from this and call it doc. Or we can simply call it mi_doc so that we know this is a material instance. So for the texture, it's working all right. Let's tint it just a bit to the brownish things, something like this. And for the tiling, this tiling is in world space, and now it's telling Unreal Engine to tile this texture every one Unreal unit. And this becomes huge. If we try to zoom on this, you see, if we try to zoom very, very, very close, we are seeing the texture in here. But we do not see anything in here because the tiling is so repetitive that we cannot see in here. So we are going to tell it to tile it every 1 meter. So we place 100 in here, 100 in here, and 100 in here. So this is what we are getting. Let's close this out. And I'm not going to select all of these and assign the material to them. Instead, I'm going to go to the meshes and this doc, I'm going to open them all. It's going to take a little bit of time and select the mi_doc and place it in here so that it gives a little bit of color tinting to this. So we can control the color tinting later on. So let's right click on this and copy and go to everyone, to each and every one, and try to paste it in these. Paste it here. And when we try to save these, you will understand how beautiful they try to add to the composition. So this one, and the frame rate dropped is because a lot of mesh instances have been opened up, and every time it's loading HDRI lighting and everything, and we have a little bit of frame drop, but that is not a problem. We save them all out and close this. And now you see, if you try to zoom, you see a little bit of primitive coloring in here. And you see the textures are mapped into the world. And of course, we have not created UVs for these. But that is not a problem. World Align Texture solves it for us. Let's take this, and you see, if I try to move this, you see the object is moving, but the texture is going to stay on its place. And that is because the texture has been mapped into the world, not the object. And this is good for bypassing the UV in creation. And this method is something that we're going to use later on when creating some objects. We do not create UVs for them. We rely on world space maps. Things like this. Okay, let's take this one and go into the window, and always I try to look at the composition camera and take a screenshot and compare it before and after. So I'm going to come in here, high resolution screenshot, and it takes a screenshot for us. You click on this, and this is what we get. This is the first one, this is the second one, and this is with the added color. You see, now it has added a lot of color into this, and I'm happy with. So this chapter has taken too long. I'm going to finish this and start finishing the block out in the next sessions. Okay, see you there.